I'm very happy to be here. I have a quick poll for you. How many people have ever bought a domain name? Maybe like GoDaddy or Namecheap, what have you. Okay, half the room. All right, so today I'm going to talk about domains, but first as an introduction, my name is Fred Xu, CEO co-founder of D3. D3 is a company leading the DomainFi charge. I'll talk about what DomainFi is in a second. Last November, Sam Altman from OpenAI purchased a domain name, a premium domain name called chat.com. He purchased this domain for $15 million for OpenAI. But it was actually quite painful. Imagine months of back and forth emails, manual escrow processes, nothing close to on-chain activity like a DeFi trader would imagine today. You're talking about a $350 billion asset class that is yet to come on-chain. That's the domain industry that I'll talk about. A little bit of history too. I actually come from the domain industry. About 25 years ago, I started a very large domain company in LA. We managed about 40 million domain names, mostly .coms. We generate billions of dollars for companies like Google, for VeriSign, who owns the .com registry, and many, many others. I did this for over a decade. So a little bit of primer about domain names, traditional domain names. So traditional domain names like Amazon.com or even like our partners at .vn who invited me to Vietnam just 3 months ago power 5 billion people. You don't even think about it. There are DNS transactions, domain transactions happening, resolution transactions happening on your phone, your computer, every minute, every second. People don't even think about this. You go to a popular exchange or trading website, first thing you do is you check 2FA, right? And of course, 2FA by email, which runs on domain name infrastructure. The domain industry has been scalable for a long time, but there's very, very opaque processes at best. It's hard to buy and sell a domain name. I'm sure many of you who have startups have had this problem before. You're trying to buy like your .com or like a .xyz name, and you just don't know how to start. You call a friend, you call a broker, you go to like a domain landing page, you submit an offer, and maybe you get a response. So the processes are very opaque at best. There's no liquidity. It's really nice just hearing the prior panel talk about tokenized real estate, like physical real estate, with the same problems, right? Where are you going to get liquidity? The good thing about domain names is that they actually exhibit, they're a digital native first asset. You buy a domain name, you're renting an address licensed by ICANN. I'll talk a little bit about what that means. But first, I also want to share my pain. This is me actually trying to buy a domain name. The domain name was earlier, about a year ago. This is a multi-million-dollar domain name. I'll tell you guys, it was tokens.com. Tokens.com, obviously a valuable domain name. And I realized after a bunch of back and forths, this guy that I was trying to correspond with to get inquiry on the domain name didn't even own the domain name. In addition, the more I corresponded with them, the price kept going up. It went up from 3 million to 4 million to 5 million. At one point, I just said, this has got to stop. I am personally living and breathing this pain. So Web3, I don't know if any of you bought an ENS name. I have an ENS name, like a .eth. Anybody have an ENS name? .eth? Okay, half the room, pretty good. So companies like this in Web3 try to do this years ago. Unstoppable, ENS, Handshake. It was a good attempt, but here's the problem. They don't actually work with 5 billion users. They probably work with 1 million users at best. Overall, there's just under 3 million ENS names, whereas there's just under 400 million real .coms and .nets and real domain names out there, right? These Web3 names are not ICANN approved. They don't work in your browser. They don't work for email. They don't work for 2FA. It's not secure at all. You wouldn't trust your crypto by interacting with a Web3 name. There's name collisions, right? There are 5 .sol projects in Web3. There's like 6.8 projects. And I think last I checked, there's like 9 .wallet or .crypto projects. Next year, there's actually going to just be 1 .sol. We're going to be creating it for Solana, right? 1.ape for the ApeCoin now. Everything's converging upon these real assets that are coming around next. And the last, of course, you cannot, once you buy a domain name today on these Web3 sites or Web3 names, there's no sort of cross-chain bridge, right? You can't move these assets across chain. You can't actually get liquidity back and forth. So how do we get the best of both worlds with all that bad stuff? On the left-hand side, you have 362 million traditional domain names. Like I said, they power 5 billion users today, right? It's a regulated environment. ISPs, even here in Vietnam, use it on a daily basis. It's a controlled environment. On the right-hand side, you have 400 million users, 400 million wallets, 10 trillion of on-chain liquidity, and it's relatively decentralized. So imagine if you can actually bring all that liquidity from both sides and innovation without all the bad stuff. This is what I call DomainFi, a DeFi layer for domain name industry. The $350 billion real-world asset class, right? Traditional domains, like I mentioned before, companies like GoDaddy, Namecheap, and Circa, Turn Commerce, companies that a lot of us in Web3 don't really understand, but we kind of know, are familiar with, right? It's a 362 million domains out there, $350 billion asset class. Okay, I said that, I keep on saying this. On the Web3 side, you have, like I said, major ecosystems like Solana, like Coinbase, like Sui, like Avalanche. And it's great seeing Laura up here, one of our partners at Avalanche. 400 million wallets, $10 trillion of on-chain liquidity. Our vision is to bring this together within this concept of DomainFi. What we're here today in Vietnam is to basically build bridges to the DomainFi economy. We're here to build infrastructure. We're an infrastructure company. And we're also enabling developers. We do have a Doma Forge lounge later. Please visit us. We'll talk about that in a second as well. The way that we're going to make DomainFi come to life is through our blockchain we're creating called Doma, D-O-M-A. You can visit Doma by going to doma.xyz. It's the world's first blockchain for the internet, a 362 million domain name asset class. Think about this. One day soon, you're going to be able to buy, sell, trade the internet. You're going to be able to trade the internet. If you were to ask me 20 years ago, this whole concept would have been completely obscene. How can you possibly do this? You start with an end purpose, what you want to do, and then all the tech before that, tokenization, chains, it's just basically enabling tech. I should try not to talk about blockchain too much. Try to talk about real world assets in application space. Think about Doma as a bridge. We're ultimately trying to bridge Web 2 and Web 3 to grow together. And I keep on saying this. On Web 3, there's 400 million wallet addresses, over 10 trillion of on-chain activity, right? The domain world that powers all humanity, just under 400 million domains in a growing asset class. This can and should be the next trillion-dollar economy. We're going to do that by bringing millions of customers on board, right? For investors who want liquidity. This is a digitally native asset class to begin with, right? We're going to bring DeFi apps. We're not going to bring DeFi apps. App developers will be. We're going to provide future-proof market access, and everything we're doing is DNS compliant under ICANN rules. Testnet for Doma is available now. You can check it out by going to start.doma.xyz. You can claim and tokenize a domain just by a few clicks. You can bring your domain name over even from GoDaddy. You know, if you have a .com or even like a .xyz, you can bring it over. You can then list it and get real-time pricing soon, right? You can trade with instant settlement. You won't have to wait weeks to have a transaction clear like chat.com did. Finally, bridging. The reason why we're building Doma is so that people can bridge liquidity across chains from Solana, from Sui, from Avalanche, from Base, and many more. Sign up today. Go to start.doma.xyz. And once again, we're trying to emphasize the partnerships that we've made over the past 2 years since starting this company. We're major partners with Base. Coinbase happens to be an investor in D3. Solana will be launching a ton of DeFi apps and top-level domains for Solana. Avalanche, our partners. Sui, Magic Eden. The list goes on. We are trying to build the leading platform through Doma to be able to trade the internet. And take a look at the QR code over here too. We have a $1 million USDC grant. Please join us in the Doma Forge Lounge later on. So again, we're trying to build an economy. This is not just about building like a platform or a marketplace or like a chain for the sake of doing a chain. We're actually trying to enable app developers, registrars, investors, exchanges, registries, wallets, DApps, founders, etc. In order for DomainFi to be successful, it requires you guys to participate. So let's build the DomainFi economy together. I look forward to meeting you guys for the next 2 days. Come say hi to myself and Mark sitting over here in black, as well as Mike over here in the hat. Thank you, everybody.